Ohio Adena leaf blade. I have looked at many of these and I still get excited looking at these. But after examining this one, I discovered that it was used as a scraper. The edge is a scraper. So unusual. And you got a straight surface here with polish on it right here, where it's been used as a knife. And if you look at this, you can see this has been used and resharpened as a knife. So what does that mean? Recently, I talked to a couple longtime collectors of artifacts in Ohio, and one's comment is, well, I've got 3 of these in my collection. The other guy said, I have several. So the question was, well, I thought it was a cache blade, and the answer was, well, not all cache blades were in caches. Some ended up all over the place, and so when you find what looks like a cache blade, it doesn't normally mean you got a Adena cache blade pile nearby. So where is all this going? Good morning, I'm Mark. Man, it's good to be back with all you people. I miss this. I miss sharing, and I go down into the archives and the caves and the garages, and I see all this material I want to share with you. And I just get real nervous because there's not enough days to do all this. But let me share what recently occurred with you. I received a phone call from a person, first name Becky, in Crawford County, which is in north central Ohio, and had a collection that she might want to sell. So I talked, she talked, we talked, and I found out that it was a farm collection off their farm, 30 acres, and for 20 years her husband, John, had walked it and had passed away a while back. And the family it was sitting. Well, bottom line is they decided they wanted to sell it. So I said, I would love to come and see it because it's a neighboring county to where I live, and I like to look at site material from a drivable distance from where I live. And we had a great time. We talked, and I saw a lot of stuff, and it was a small farm. But what was interesting was here's an opportunity over a long period of time on a small piece of land to see what was actually coming off the area. And so I'm going to walk you through this. And the reason I'm going to do this is that a good number of you field walkers, at one time or another, you have experienced a landowner struggling with, well, do I sell this or not? Or perhaps a farm couple with one of them long gone and they want to get rid of it, or grandkids. And you're faced with some decisions. You know, do I want to maintain this as a site, or am I going to break it up? Now, let me clarify all this. I am a field walker. If anything were ever to be said about Indiana Jones here, it would be Mark is, was, and will always be a field walker. And so looking at this, my eyes were in terms of how to preserve and protect the site material. And we discussed it. She said, and I asked specifically, are you ready to sell this? Do you know you want to sell it? Yes. You have family members. And are they sure they want to sell it? Yes. So once we reached that point, then it was, okay, well, let's look. And if it's not something that I can protect or do something with, I'll see if I can lead you to someone. So in the course of all that, our time there with her and looking at all her material, I quickly looked for anything that was extraordinary, museum quality, or needed to be set aside, and possibly said, look, this is worth $2,000, this is worth $10,000. You may want to auction this or something like that. Example would be a collection I looked at a couple of years ago in Fredericktown, Ohio, and the woman had a birdstone in it. And not only was it a birdstone, but it was a famous long time ago collector by the name of Worley. And she said, well, I don't know what I have. And you know, you can, if there's some pieces you want, you can have them. And I think I just want to say, okay, so people, authenticity, honesty, integrity. And I showed her the birdstone, immediately said, this goes to an auction. And she did, and she got over $5,000 for it. So immediately I looked it over very quickly, and I didn't really see anything that needed to go to a special auction to bring in a lot of money for the family. It was decided that I would use this best as I could for things like this, moments like this with you, to educate. Our local nature center put up artifact displays so that the county and the people can benefit. And so let me talk to you about this farm and what we're going to look at here in a minute. It's a Bucyrus, Ohio, Crawford County area farm. John had hunted for 20 years. He often hunted with his wife. He belonged to the the Archaeological Society of Ohio. And I'm giving you information that's going to actually help you make an assessment of what's there and what's not there and why. Field walking was his number one hobby. He was not a buyer and a seller. He attended many ASO state meetings, and he always had a table. He was always friendly and had things there that he had found, and he'd won many ribbons for some of his finds from his area. He was known, and so you ask around, anybody know anything about this guy? All the remembrances where we saw him at meetings, he was always friendly, and he always brought his field finds with him. So with that in mind, we begin our looking at this man's collection. And let's just start right here with this frame. In this one, I put together quickly after scanning and looking through all the material, because your eyes tend to see what's big you tend to see what's colorful first, or anything that's out of the ordinary first. And so what I saw was, bam, this. And I have not ever seen one of these in anybody's local collection. It's a bear tooth. And it's shiny because I put Elmer's glue on it to preserve it. It was already starting to fall apart. And the Elmer's, if you just do a nice coating all the way around, it's going to protect it. But this typifies this site, this 30-acre farm and John's collection. So in it, you've got a lot of time periods. A lot of people are interested in these pieces. We know this as a dovetail, archaic. We know this as a dovetail, archaic, both being Flint Ridge. But this one was a mystery. And so you use patterns, things that you've learned. Quality, quality, quality. Dovetails are usually made from quality. And I had a hunch that maybe I was working with a well-used dovetail that broke and got reworked. The base was prehistorically broken, it's gone, but they reworked it down to this. The notches are very perfect little semicircles right here. Very perfect little semicircles right here. And then when you take the piece, and I'm going to use this one, if I hold them up and let you look at them, you'll see that this side is flat and this side is humped out a little bit. Really important to help you ID an authentic dovetail piece. One side will be flattened and the other will be humped a little bit. And if I hold it this way, maybe you can see how it's humped. So knowing all this, playing a suspicion on this one, what I found is that it's humped on one side and it's flat on the other. I've got notches that line up with these notches. I have a reworked broken base that they tried to repair it, and it's just basically a well-used up dovetail. Now that's important to me because I want to know if these were casual lost pieces, or if his site is a campsite, if his site is a village site. And all this in my head is thinking, I wonder if they're going to let me walk their farm, or if it's even something that would be worth my time to walk after we do something with their collection. So I'm going to go through this one frame quickly. This is an extraordinary large, let me put a cell phone beside it so you can get an idea. Yes, this is a very old-fashioned beam me up Scotty cell phone. Remember, I'm old. But this is a great pentagonal piece. It's big. In my opinion, this whole collection, this probably is one of the most unique things. And in a collection like this, you're always going to find one or two, three things that really surprise you. So there's always some question marks with things that you don't know, that don't belong. This happens to be highly polished steatite that's been shaped geometrically. That's very unusual. And then if we zoom down here, we have some knives that have been worked. We have an Adena point, a Hopewell hafted scraper, a couple archaic knives. Then we have some late woodland material here, some intrusive mound. Of interest to me are the triangular points. My experience says that if I'm finding multiples in one area, I can expect to find pottery. There were multiples on his farm, but he did not have any pottery in his collection. John had a lot of intrusive mound and what would be from late woodland to late woodland material, the intrusive mound. There was a lot of those. And then interestingly, and this might be new for most of you viewers, is this material here, 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 and here. This is what we call Pipe Creek chert. It's pretty much Lake Erie material, and the pits are up around the lake. Beautiful stuff. Rarely do we find it anywhere else in the state of Ohio. It made it down a few rivers into some counties short distance from Lake Erie. Just fantastic Flint Ridge scraper, and I would call this actually a thumb scraper. I want you to look how beautiful it is. I'm going to move it over here so you can see it. With the light, really an unusual piece of Flint Ridge, a thumb scraper, okay? And then just some odds and ends pieces. I like these two right here. I'm going to hold one up by the light, and I'm thinking that you ought to be able to see through it. This is what we call mossy agate, Flint Ridge flint. And not all the mossy agate points you find are going to be this transparent. You get some that are a little bit thicker, like this one, and you really can't see through them like this one. But nonetheless, we're looking at two big mossy agates. Interestingly, both Hopewell. Now that's important. And that's going to help me make some assessments of this site. And this piece is what's called Indiana hornstone. But it's been worked off on both ends. So we're looking at some type of a knife. This frame were pieces selected out of John's entire collection, put together for a real quick overview of his collection. So let's talk about the farm. It's located in Ohio, and it's along one of the glacial moraines, and we have several in this part of Ohio. And we know from experience that those were hot spots for prehistoric people, pretty much all the cultures. And so something to keep in mind. We know that there are some rolling hills on his property, no big hills. We knew that we saw no significant water sources, a tiny little stream, maybe a spring feeding into this tiny stream. Remembering that the water table has dropped a lot since prehistoric times. And then, are there any other significant farm collections in the area? And then, if you're in this glacial area, that means the fields are going to be laced with glacial till material. You're going to have a lot of rocks in those fields, big ones, little ones, and a lot of polished rock. So that makes walking a challenge. Now, that's important too, because basically I'm going to make an assessment of this. Pick up the collection. Yes, we'll use it for education, but we also want to make that big decision. Do we want to come back and maybe go walking with Becky or just do a random survey ourselves? So when I'm looking at this, and you're going to look at this in a minute, there's stuff that is beautiful. There's a lot of material. John did a great job, but there's also material that's missing. And that missing stuff is going to help me make my decision for sure if I want to walk this or not. So I've put together like a little overview. So we have flint types, and quickly I'll mention, we have a wide range of Coshocton flint, Pipe Creek. A lot of the cherts that we find in North and Northwest Ohio are present in this collection. Indiana hornstone, a wide range of Flint Ridge, but no nethers Flint Ridge flint, and Delaware chert. Those are the dominant flint types. We have slate, we have preformed slate, we have drilled slate, we have broken slate that's been polished and reworked, and just a little bit of Adena, a little bit of Hopewell. And with the odds and ends, which were always interesting to me, were the shells, because there's no big streams nearby that would have had the mollusks. But if you go a few miles, you're going to get into a bigger stream where there are clams. And so that was really interesting. Then notched points. When I looked at his collection, what I'm seeing is more notched points than anything else. Well, those are pretty easy to see. And of the notched, it's probably early archaic all the way up to the triangles, the late woodland. A good sampling of Hopewell Adena, a good sampling of intrusive mound and triangles. So all this is again, it's working in my brain. And we're going to scan. You're going to get a chance to look at all this. But okay, so here it is. Let's take a minute and actually look. So why don't we just start in this frame, and we'll very quickly take a quick peek. There's some pieces for me that are obviously have been in a fire. This one has been charred a little bit. And I really like these big flakes right here. Flint Ridge Flint, Flint Ridge Flint. And this is Delaware chert. And this is actually a little knife blade right here. More Delaware chert right here. But if there's a lot of Hopewell points, I should be seeing not only the big thinning flakes of Hopewell, but I should be seeing the narrow bladelets of Hopewell, which I'm not. Interesting. All right, let's slip over. We looked at this frame in the middle, and we're going to look at two more frames down the line. And I'll quickly point out another evidence of a bivalve, a mollusk, clam, mussel in the field. Now, I don't have John anymore to tell me where he found it, if he was working on a fire pit, a garbage pit, or anything like that. But we have a bear tooth, we have some shells, and we have some fired material. So I'm thinking for sure a fire pit. So again, we have more Flint Ridge. These are getting narrower, a little bit longer, and a couple of them actually have a little bit of retouch on the other side. These are what we call uniface blades. They're worked on one side and not the other. And then just a few that are actually made out of Coshocton flint. And then here's some of the northwest Ohio cherts. Just a real quick zoom, pieces, parts of triangles, thumb scraper, bigger thumb scraper, and just a nice consensus of pieces. Let's come up here. There were big pieces, small pieces on the farm, trying to find the earliest, and the earliest would be the bifurcates. Not a whole lot of side notches, but there were bifurcates in this field. What's interesting that from here, about 10 miles away, was a prehistoric cranberry bog that is written about in the history of the county. And pioneers went there to pick cranberries, and boy, in Ohio, that's a hot spot. Buckeye Lake is big because it's cranberries, and this county actually had it. And by that bog, there were a lot of bifurcate points being found. Let's just keep slipping down the road, this direction. Come on over. So we have big isosceles triangle, and basically in Ohio, we call them we have our Lavana points, we have our Madison points. There's various types of triangles, and here's another example of Hopewell, Adena, and I'm keeping in mind now how many Adena, how many Hopewell am I finding? Let's go down this way. Another shell, beautiful flakes. Here's a nice Hopewell bladelet that was knocked off. These are what I expect to find. This one has been heat treated, and this green pops out especially when it's been heat treated. A few drills. Now I'm getting evidence of a possible village site with these drills. Again, a wide range of the Flint Ridge. Pop over this direction. We have a few knives that he set apart. There were more that were broken very badly. These weren't broken quite as badly, so I left them in that frame. And then this just simply represents all the broken material in his 20 years of walking that he had. And most of it is, you can tell it was an artifact. It was either broken in a fire or broken prehistorically, or it was just something that they tried to work and they simply couldn't work. And we'll finish up on the table by looking at the stone tools that came off the farm. And they're the type of tools that I would expect probably find on a village site. Now let's just zoom in on this. I was reading recently that in Ohio, very few, if any, axes have ever been found or excavated from the ground. They've been surface finds. So we have an axe, a 3/4, 1, 2, 3/4 grooved axe. These are younger than the axes that have the groove all the way around them. Here's a preform axe. I've not ever really seen a preform axe before. They have a groove right here, and over here, no groove. And that's not even a prehistoric break. So I don't know really what was going on here, but it's interesting nonetheless. And then we have some of these mortars. These are not uncommon to my viewer, nor us who go out and field walk. We find these round, semi-flat stones with little concavities. One right here, flip him, another one right here. Some type of a mortar, and oftentimes these will resemble this part of a pestle. And in Ohio, many of our pestles have a concavity right here as well. This one does have one. It's very slight. And I listen to people after people say, oh, well, they were grinding with these. They were grinding grain. And then one old timer said, no, they weren't. And he picked this up and he put it between his legs and he had his legs hold it. They said it was a mortar. And they used it as a mortar. And I thought, well, that just rewrote history. That's another possibility. And you guys are start forming your own opinions too as you watch and follow along with us. Look at the celts. Here's a slate celt. And yes, they did make those out of slate. And it's just going to be so much more breakable than a hardstone granite slate. Okay, so here's slate and some of your hardstone. This is a beautiful, beautiful hardstone granite celt. Gorgeous. I'm going to point out the pole end on these. So see how they're kind of pointed, kind of squared off. Typically in Ohio, we tend to put these in with the Adena group. And the ones that are a little more squared off, we slip into the Hopewell group. And then over here, these are what we call blank or preforms slate that are being worked down. They're going, who knows, they're either going to maybe go into a gorget or a pendant, or maybe end up as a celt. Here's a neat little celt, a little fat bugger, and but kind of the round bulbous type point. And these I don't find very many of. It's a 3/4 groove hammerstone, a grooved hammer. There's places up in northwest Ohio around Findlay where they find a lot of them. Up around Greenwich, Huron County, north of Richland, we find them. But this is a unique find in this part of the state of Ohio. So we have some stone tools coming off the site. We have slate coming off the site. Of interest to me is the volume of broken slate that's been prehistorically broken and reworked. Here's a notched piece along the sides. They call them tally marks. And I really caution people to be quick to label these because everybody's going to start thinking tallies. It's going to get in the way of considering what they may have really used them for. So, be careful. Here's a banner stone, part of a butterfly banner stone. The hole would have been right here and the wings are right here. And it was repaired. There's a repair hole on it. So, great example of the artifacts coming off his farm. So what does all this mean? Where am I going with all this? So Becky gave us permission to walk, and I needed to make an assessment. Basically this, there's enough material here that goes the full range. We know it's multi-component. We know that it's really heavy, middle archaic, a little bit of early archaic, no paleo. Woodland is here, early woodland, and then even a good smattering of late woodland. But no pottery was being found. Hardly any thumb scrapers were being found. Hardly any flake knives were being found. And he walked long enough that he should have found these things. Debitage, where's all the debitage, the flakes, the chips? Was he not picking it up? If you've got a village site, that doesn't guarantee chips because those puppies are like razor blades and you don't want anybody walking on them and getting all cut up. My experience is that you find a lot of them around a fire pit. but just not scattered throughout the village. But where are the big pieces of just debitage flint, the flake flint? That's all missing. Hammerstones are missing. They're not here either. So there's things missing that ought to be here. And then I'm going to take a look and start thinking about John to help me consider this farm. His wife showed me his walking probing stick, not a little trowel like mine where I get down by the ground and look around and dig and pop things out of the ground. His was probably about maybe 4 feet long. And he was with a little end where he could scoop things and get them out of the ground. Well, that tells me that he's not getting down close to the earth. He's up. And for the most part, his eyes are out of that really good zone of seeing things. And the other thing is, and it's just worth knowing. And once I saw a picture of John, I saw that he was a big man, tall, but a big man. He was over 100 pounds. He was a good man. He was funny. People liked him, but he was a large man. And people who are constructed that way are not destined to do a lot of bending over, a lot of stooping. So he didn't spend a lot of time close to the earth, which tells me there is so much more out there to look at. So after looking at the collection, looking at select pieces coming out of the collection, seeing in general what was coming, the time periods, and the wide range of flint. It wasn't just a Coshocton flint site or field. It wasn't just a cherts from this part of Ohio and northern Ohio, but it had wide diversity in all the cultures that were present. Of course, as we get more toward the late woodland, we're dealing with cherts and some Coshocton material. But everything said there will be at least one village site on this 30-acre farm, and the best, in my opinion, is yet to come. So Becky was great. She sold the collection. It's going to be used pretty much for education, and hopefully she will walk with us, and we will get over there and explore that farm next spring. We just took off and went down a very long cow path together. But man, you got to know, this is stuff I love. I'm a field walker, and I'm looking at all this from, could I have found that? Would I have found it? How much more did he miss when he was walking? How much more do I miss when I'm walking? I heard somebody say, Mark is a vacuum cleaner when he walks upfield. Who knows? But my point to everybody is that we want to keep on learning. We can learn from each other. I've been doing intense mentoring now for the last 2 months, as much as 3 times a week. And this past week, I even had 3 people in at my house. And we got into the micro tools, the engravers, the perforators. We looked at the tough stuff that's very small. We looked at the uniface pieces, the broken uniface pieces, the broken bladelets that you only have maybe a fourth of. And those are details of the prehistoric people that lived in the site. So we had a great time, didn't we? I did. I hope you had fun. A couple real quickies. You want to get yourself a good book on flint types, especially for the area that you're walking. If you're walking Ohio, this one will be a real necessary, good book to have. And I referred to Bob's book quite often on stone tools. It's really helpful, and it helps you with the time periods, the scarcity, and what it means, when and where you're finding them. So thank you for hanging in there with me today. I hope to see you sooner. I apologize for my long lax between YouTube videos, but I got to tell you, I had a field this year. I got in 5 different times, and my friends, I tease them all the time because there's a mountain in front of my front door. There's 31-gallon bags still dirty, sealed from this one area on this farm that I walked. So I was busy, and I wanted to just thank you very much again for coming along, and I'll see you again real soon. Okay, adios.